So I think we are at a real crossroads of human history, right? And so this idea of revolution or evolution is very, very much at the heart of things. And we're seeing young people in Egypt and the Middle East, right, making a huge difference. And, you know, I look around this room and I see your generation as critical and maybe one of the most important generations so far for this revolution. I've been teaching for 40 years in higher education, and somehow I think that there's a moment at hand here. And the revolution that I think is happening, and you know, Soka Gakkai has a huge role to play, all the religions have a role to play, I think, and that is to expand our sense of concern and care. My sense is if we can expand our identity, you know, to include right now the Earth community, especially the Earth community, which includes people at a distance, people your age, older, younger, intergenerational concerns, but also other species, the species that are at this moment endangered and suffering from loss of habitat and so on. So, you know, there's this revolution of the environment too, which is very much part of it. So any revolution, I think, has got to be not only on the human sphere, but on the Earth sphere, and include the natural world as well.
So, you know, in the 4 years I've been practicing this Buddhism, you know, one of, you know, President Ikeda's sort of main extra organizational really initiatives is that of nuclear abolition, you know, because it's really, you could say maybe the pinnacle of, you know, human animosity and evil, you know, just this, of course, you know, very intended and calculated method of destruction of, you know, life. And, you know, I think that's why President Ikeda really focuses so much and really encourages us to do the same. And I wanted to ask, you know, how you feel that really focusing on religions and ecology can help to alleviate this, you know, just impending threat of nuclear destruction.
Now, the way I see it is that we need to bring together all of these concerns. And the Earth Charter, as you know, has the three great pillars: ecological integrity, social economic justice, democracy, nonviolence, and peace. And this last one is where I think the anti-nuclear issues arise, because we need peace on the horizon, which is also what President Ikeda has been speaking at for a long, long time. And this is the way I would put it, and I don't think it's political at all. I think it's just the fact. The military budget in this country alone is obscene. Absolutely obscene. And so we can't put money into the social economic changes that are needed, and people who've fallen out of the safety nets, you know, the poor, and this means here and around the world. We have immense inequity, don't we, in the human sphere, in this country and elsewhere. But it's a disgrace here. It shouldn't be. You know, we can do so much better. And then ecology also gets left out of the money. I mean, how many nuclear weapons do we need? How many submarines do we need of this type? And unless we start changing an industry, of military industry, you know, a military mindset, they're cutting the Environmental Protection Agency budget 30%, right? That's on the horizon. And yet the military budget is in the billions and billions of dollars, trillions. So I think we need to pull these together, you know, ecology, justice, and peace. And many of the world's religions have this as their trinity, their triad, these concerns. So I can say more about the religion and ecology, but I'm glad you mentioned it. It often gets a little bit left out.
So you've already started to delve into a little bit of the social economic equality, which is kind of where my question focus is. I'm really interested in how economic values currently, at least in this country, are pitted against ecologic and spiritual values, and specifically how we can bridge the gap between the affluent and the poor in terms of being able to contribute to the environment, because currently it's kind of cast in a way where, oh, it's too expensive to eat sustainably, or it's that's the sum of what I'm interested in terms of how we can kind of recast it or empower not just affluent groups of people to be a part of this movement.
Mm-hmm. Your question is so important that the UN doesn't know how to deal with it. Our government doesn't know how to deal with it. Why? Because we had a meltdown in Wall Street, right, in 2008, because the value thing is completely out of whack. You know, it's completely out of whack. How much money does it take? You know, I mean, the greed, we can go into all of that, but the astonishing levels at which people played the market, you know, at the expense of the rest of the world, as it turns out. You know, as it's turning, I mean, Yale's had to cut, we're talking about top down and all over the world. The suffering is immense because of these values that are completely distorted. So I do not have a good answer to this incredibly important question, but I do think those of us who collectively care about a human revolution, a transformation of energy, human energy and concerns, have got to learn how to articulate this in a way that's not just preachy, but that captures the imagination. And it's why I'm so glad to see next generation, you know, you here. Because and I feel it with my students at Yale, they understand something's deeply missing from our society. You know, it's very superficial in a certain way, and it's very alienating. So what I'm saying is we need a new language, we need a spiritual practice that centers us, we need to speak truth to power. You know, we need to say this is unacceptable, that people are sleeping on the streets of New York in, you know, homeless people and so on and so forth. I mean, this bothers, you know, me deeply, and it bothers everyone. People at the UN say we need a new type of sustainability, right, that has not just economic profit, but social values mixed in, what's happening to humans, and environmental values, right? Even for a lot of people, environmental values is new, but we've put the externalities, we haven't computed the cost of the environment in our economics. But there is a fourth level here, and that's where your question goes to, and that is we've got to compute values and spirituality and where the human actually gets the deepest, the words are difficult here, but the deepest sense of meaning and purpose in a life. And we've got to figure all of these together. You know, the economic value can't trump social values or environmental values. And now we're beginning, with the help of your generation, to put back into the equation what are the deeper values.
So I previously mentioned that I studied clinical psychology for a master's. And I was particularly interested in your idea of a traditional environmental knowledge and in understanding the power and energy of nature. And in my field of research, I looked at spiritual healing methods and how different cultures use various natural resources and traditions in order to like heal, rather than using medication or psychotherapies. And I think one of the key issues right now with researchers is asking whether we can apply Western concepts to non-Western cultures. I personally think it's important to combine the two, but it's really hard because I feel like a lot of non-Western cultures and values are vanishing because of like modernization. And so I was wondering if you could please share your perspectives on that and like what kind of attitude should we keep when we're working with different cultures and stuff.
What's your background? Where are you from?
I'm Japanese, but I grew up in South America.
Okay. Yeah. See, this is the amazing world we live in, isn't it? It's so fabulously fusion, you know? It's just so amazing. I look around, wow, I could talk to each one of you for an hour. You know, just the different experiences. It's wonderful. Very moving to me. It really is. It's very, very moving and hopeful. So I think we have so much to learn from other cultures, which is why, as a young person, I went to Japan and was there 73, 74, probably before you were born. And it completely changed my life. And I traveled pretty extensively in Asia, and it was all very cheap to do, and a lot of young people my age were doing this, and all through India and Southeast Asia and down to Indonesia. And I've done this, quite a bit over the years, 35 years of going back to Asia. So I think we in the West have so much to learn. So my husband's specialty is shamanism. Shamanic practices of indigenous peoples, the healers, and so on. And we've been very involved with Native American peoples and peoples of the Crow tribe in Montana, but also indigenous peoples in different parts of the world. And I think healing is a very fascinating psychic, spiritual, bodily thing. It's not just the symptoms and you take a drug, and yet there is so much suffering in our world. There's so much mental and spiritual suffering. Huge, huge, huge. Undiagnosed, right? And ennui and alienation and anger and frustration and emptiness. And I don't have to tell you because I think you understand that. But what I would say, because it's a big topic, and what I'm trying to do is just affirm we need to know about other cultures and we need to know about other healing practices. We do need to be discerning. Not all of them are perfect. And my mother has had arthritis, and so she's had hip operations. And sometimes we need these things as well. But my bottom line would be this: is that I think there's a lot in preventative medicine that we can learn from these cultures, especially Asian cultures. I mean, I do qigong, shiatsu. Tai Chi is fantastic. These are arts that people in Korea and Japan and China understand. And a lot of the Chinese medicine, I think, can help people and so on. So we've got to do preventative medicine, drawing on some of these healing practices that I think are very, very beneficial to people, therapeutic. So, big topic, to be continued.
I don't know the situation in the United States, but in Japan, religions tend to be considered as risky because not a few Japanese people think that sometimes religion motivate people to fighting wars, or religions make people narrow-minded and so on. And I don't agree with this thinking way, but do you think what is crucial for avoiding such situations?
So, I think the negative part of religion, it's good you address that. I think it's very good we're all aware of it. And certainly in academia, it's very present. I don't know how it is in the schools that you might be teaching in and so on, but people have an allergy to religion. A lot of people do. And yet it's a very contested, murky territory in the U.S. as a whole. So it's mixed. It's a very, very complicated and good. All of these are good questions, and I spent a lot of time thinking about it last summer because we're writing a book on religion and ecology, and I'm trying to address this. And one of the ways is to say religions have problems and promise, and it's very important to say right off the bat they do have problems. They are imperfect. They are often, they're made by you and me, who are not perfect, and we're judgmental, and we're angry, or we're whatever. But we're trying. So if we say there are problems, and we understand the intolerance or whatever these issues are, sometimes it puts people at ease, because we can say we're not trying to be defensive and so on. But in the area of religion and ecology, or in the area of human rights, or in the area of some of the healing arts, religions have promise and contributions to make. So it's all discernment. We have to be very discerning. And again, it's why meditation matters, why going into a deep interior space matters, clearing off the mind and so on. So anyway, it's a big, big question. And maybe if there's time, let's talk about it upstairs too, or wherever we're going. But I want to make sure we sort of keep going around. But the dialogues that President Ikeda has done, I think, are tremendous. You know, he's done them with very noted people around the world and published them and so on and so forth. So I think that's a huge contribution. I think one of many contributions is the focus on peace in SGI. Very, very powerful, consistent focus, which includes this disarmament concern and so on. But a lot of groups have let that go, you see, but he's been very consistent in that, which is excellent. And SGI has also been hugely supportive of the Earth Charter, you know, with the wonderful Seeds of Hope and your presence in Ahmedabad and your presence in the Parliament of World Religions. And very consistently, you've been a great help to the Earth Charter, which is terrific. So that's just, you know, the SGI has made wonderful contributions in a number of areas, and we're grateful.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm trained in social work,
Yeah.
but for some reason, I had the opportunity to work as a consultant for the United Nations Environment Program. So also, having worked with people with you know, different religious background in sub-Saharan Africa, especially community-based organizations like you know, nuns and different types of people. Do you have any advice for any, you know, people, you know, community-based people, community organizers or community-based organization staff who's really interested in, you know, working with in sub-Saharan Africa region or any of the low, you know, extreme, you know, low resource settings?
Well, you know, again, I'm humbled here because you would have a much better idea than I would. I really do believe that. But I do think one of the areas, and I'm saying the obvious that you all know, is empowerment of women. Several of you, I think, are interested in working with women. And, you know, the population issue worldwide had changed once women were educated, right? I mean, to release, I'm not saying, gentlemen, that your influence isn't hugely important, but to release the power of women is so important. To affirm what the talents are, the creativities are, the intuitive knowledge, the alternative ways of thinking, and so on. I do feel, this may sound very simplistic, but I do feel we have different ways of thinking about the world and integrating, and it's very intuitive. It's very from the unconscious. And yet when we get our focus, when we, you know, you've made a shift too, and I think it sounds great. There's just amazing energy.
So I think that, you know, I completely agree that religion is a great place to start in terms of fomenting an ecological revolution because, like you said, religion at its base really takes into account how people interact with the environment. And I myself have had the pleasure to be able to study with, you know, Native American shamans as well as medicine women in Ghana and Africa and in Brazil. And I see the impact that climate change is having on religions themselves in terms of what is available, you know, for people, you know, who practice traditional religions. Which relates so closely to the earth. And so, you know, for example, in Brazil, the amount of land that, you know, the houses of candomblé that draw very heavily from the land, you know, their land is being encroached upon by, you know, cities and other urban structures. And, you know, in many of the Native American communities that I visited, you know, you really don't even see a lot of fertile land. You know, they're buying vegetables and they're buying foods, and it's just so removed from their traditional practices. So how do you translate, you know, what's happening on the ground level in terms of, you know, what human beings are able to make use of to practice their religions? How do you translate that into policy that really addresses their needs?
Wow. We only have a few minutes. It's so important, and it goes back to your question about traditional values and cultures and so on. And, you know, it's, so you know, it's so important, and I don't have a full answer for it, but I'll come back to the religion and ecology work that we're trying to do as an offering in this direction. And, you know, all of our work is an offering. All of your work is an offering, you know, for the Earth community and future generations. And we may never see the fruits of our work, right? We may never see it, but that's okay too. But what we were trying to do with the Religion and Ecology project that began at Harvard in very small. You know, we began with Buddhism, and with maybe 35 people, largely scholars and some environmentalists. And then we went to Confucianism, and then all of a sudden it started to take off because people really saw this was very important for adding to the ecological framework. But what we say is, we said then, it's not a sophisticated methodology, it's a simple one, but I think it has some value, and it can be complexified by next generation. But we were trying to say, we can retrieve these values from these traditions, re-examine them in light of present circumstances, and reconstruct. So retrieval, reevaluation, reconstruct. And those Harvard volumes, that's what we put into the series forward. And so we can't take, like, the idea of dominion in a Christian sense. You know, we don't want to take that passage from Genesis and say, well, so we're retrieving dominion, but we're re-examining it and saying, okay, no, actually that means stewardship for our times, right? Care for creation. And so we reconstruct an ecological theology. And that's the work of theologians and ministers and others and congregations to reconstruct what that means. But I do think we need to rely on tradition and culture and practice and adapt to modern circumstances, for sure. But you know, it also breaks my heart that many of these traditions are being immensely eroded, as you know, by modernity, by collapse of community, by indifference of the American public. Native American reservations are very fragmented places, very, very fragmented. But I'm also amazed. We have gone many, many times to the Sundance with the Crow. You know, they've kept alive their traditional practices, as I'm sure you know, of various rituals that are hugely healing. And I think maybe I'll conclude here, because, but you know, we need a healing, don't we, of the human heart and of the earth. And if we put these together, some of you are working on this directly, but we allow our healing to affect earth and vice versa, you know. And we allow the healing elements of the earth to heal us as well. So that's where I'll leave you. But I am so moved to speak with you and listen to your questions and your wonderful experiences. And I wish you joy and creativity in your work.